Good evening, this is Shmuel Biabchik speaking. We are here at session number 2 for the Hanshi Steve Kaufman Chronicles, describing the karate through
Chronicles. I like
Chronicles.
that.
Yes, we are
Hey.
just reviewing the history of karate through your eyes, Hanshi, and that's very exciting. And today, by the way, is December 7, 2018. And I think the next question we're gonna have for you, which is naturally coming over after all your writing, is you become a world-renowned author about Musashi and the books of five rings that you interpreted. If you can tell everybody more about what you did, how it started over.
Yeah, this is serious. This is important. My interpretation was not the first interpretation, okay, or translation, or however you want to call it, okay. There are a couple of others out there, and I read them, they were okay. And one was a hardcover. As a matter of fact, one of them was even a Japanese business guide, which I thought was, okay. And then there were a couple of others. One was done by a language professor or something like that, like to do an exact translation of the Gorin no Sho, which is, Musashi's Book of Five Rings. I did not sit down and decide, hey, I'm going to do it the right way or anything like that. As a matter of fact, my students were coming over to me with these other copies of the book, the other versions. And saying to me like, hey, sensei, have you seen this? I said, yeah, right. What do you want to do? Let's work out. That kind of thing. And so one day, one of my students came over. I forget which one it was. And by the way, when I was teaching back in the 60s, in the early 60s here in New York, you didn't have any pussies taking karate, man. I mean, you had some real bangers that wanted to know how this stuff worked because they started finding out about it. See, whatever. And the way this whole thing started was one of my students came over to me with a particular version of the book. And he said to me, what is this guy talking about over here? I said, what was this guy talking about over here? Read the book, He says, yeah, but something's missing. I said, what do you, brain is missing, man, And I looked at it and I said, okay, well, yeah, but that's what the book says, but that's really not what it means. He said, well, what do you mean? What does it mean? I said, all right, you know what? I don't want to interrupt the class now. I don't want to make myself crazy with this, I'll write out an explanation of what he's talking about here, man. He says, all right, man. So, I wrote out an explanation of it, and I said, wait, let me go with these other. There was only about 3 versions available. And I said, let me read the 3 versions here and see what's going on, And I read it, and I says, oh, man, no wonder nobody understands what these guys are talking about, because they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, now we're going to get into some deep water over here from the beginning. I'm telling you right now. And I'll have a little taste.
L'chaim.
One of them was exactly a translation, these are verbatim of the kanji The kanji is the classical writing language of Japanese. And so that's pretty loose as to which way you want to interpret something. Another guy was writing it also, but from an academic perspective. And another version of it was from a business perspective. And I said, these guys, wait a minute. This is not a business book. There is a significant difference between not getting a deal signed and having your head cut off. Okay? Absolutely. Which is one of the first lines in my interpretation of it. So I wrote it out and I gave it to the student. And he said, so why don't these guys write it this way? I said, well, you got to understand also the work I was doing at the time. I was in a business that caused me to interact on nefarious levels of commercial reality. I was a banger, okay? But not like a killer kind of thing, which I did not decide to be. It's just kind of happened. Okay, man.
Evolved.
So I gave him the answer, and he said, "All right, that makes sense." So you give somebody something good, they come back, they want more, right? So another guy, so they're reading these books over there, man. And another guy comes over to me, he says, Sensei, what's this mean? I says, hey, I don't want to make a career out of this thing, I'm busy trying to put food on the table here, I'm romanticizing this too a little bit, you have to, okay? Otherwise, then I read the book and I decided that it made that. So you have to put yourself into the work. If you don't put yourself into the work, very important. If you don't put yourself into the work becomes drudgery, man. And it becomes an intellectual exercise to maybe satisfy the needs of a commercial endeavor. So anyway, what's happening is, I said, what now, man? He says, shows me this thing over here. I said, well, no, because the guy's saying, when you pull out your sword, you slash and you make sure that you chop them down. And I says, no, man, these guys are playing with their pencils. Okay. Don't forget, Brooklyn boy over here, man. I'm going to tell you what I think, So I said, here's the problem with this. He says what means one thing. He says it means one thing. He says it means one thing. And they're all putting it based on their own personal subjective experience, I guess you could put it that way.
Yes.
And they didn't have any from the battle perspective, It's not a book about business, though it can lend itself to that. It's not a book about intellectual derivation to suggest the meanings of Japanese calligraphy or kanji, okay? And it's not an art book. It's a manual of mortal combat. And this is very significant over here. And I think this is one of the reasons that my version has become the best-selling version in the world. I mean, is now in 2018 is every 2 seconds somebody else comes out with another version. And it's interesting that most of the versions that they're coming out with that have any merit are all based on mine. Okay? And I say that very straight ahead. I mean, if anybody's got a problem with that, hey, screw yourself. Okay?
When was it published?
Reality's reality, man,
Right. When was it published?
My version came out in 92, 93. And I, actually went into some deep isolation, I guess you might call it, deep meditation. I'm not talking about I'm not talking about becoming a Zen acolyte, man. I'm talking about meditation, man. Just why am I doing this, man? Now that's a very important thing you have to ask yourself when you're doing something. Yeah, I'm doing it because I like it and I want to tell you what I think about it and this is how stuff works and stuff, But that is not how stuff works on a higher level of reality. Great artists, great teachers, great minds, great industrialists are guided accordingly, okay? And so, in order for me to do this, I'm going to get into some interesting concepts here, so deal with it. I had to communicate with Musashi. Whoa, okay. Now, what do? You talk to him? I mean, you made believe you were in contact? No, that's not what I'm talking about, okay? But I had to transform my psyche. Don't forget, I'm practicing. I'm constantly doing this. I'm already kick-ass black belt kind of thing. Back in the day in Brooklyn,
Yes.
where we were going to everybody's different school and said, hey, what do you know? What do you know? Let's find out. Let's switch stuff. And then all of a sudden you start getting into a situation where you're going to keep punching and kicking and blocking, or you're going to become a philosopher and ignore the whole thing, or are you going to make a decision to commit yourself to becoming the thing? And I'm going to tell you, baby, that's a bitch. Okay, because now all of a sudden everybody starts looking at you sideways. Well, where's Kaufman going? When I say I was talking to Musashi, I don't mean like, I'm talking to you or I'm talking to the camera. Hey, Zash, what's going on? Yo, oh, sorry. And I'm not talking about that, okay? I'm talking about a deep, I don't want to use the word spiritual because that's a misnomer. I'm talking about a deep communication with my higher self that would permit me to get out of my own way so that I could think in terms like that. Now, you got to keep in mind, I have not got a record of going out and killing 60 people by the time I was 30, which Musashi is reported to have done. I piss off a lot of people, man. Well, he killed 60 people in Mortal Kombat. Yeah, right, okay. How do you know it wasn't 80? And how do you know it wasn't 10? But let's go with what we have as far as the annals go, okay? And he developed the two-sword technique. Well, remember, in fact, that like at the time that like the European influence was also coming into the Orient, and the Italian or the Portuguese or the French or the Spaniards were also swordsmen, different kind of sword style, but they were also using the long sword, the rapier, and a short sword or a dagger. So what are you talking about? A katana and a wakizashi, which is the short sword. They also had a dagger, okay? So the Japanese have a tanto, which is a short knife, which is the in-close knife, So it's not a question of what was better or what was more viable. And they said, well, who would win in a fight? D'Artagnan from the Three Musketeers or Musashi? See, I don't even get into questions like that because they're meaningless, Yeah. Who's the greatest boxer that ever lived? I don't know, probably somebody we nobody ever heard of, Okay. Who's the greatest karate fighter that ever lived? These are meaningless questions. who's the greatest saxophone player in the world? You know, that kind of, doesn't go anywhere, okay? So I says, well, what is the intent of Musashi and the Book of Five Rings? Now, whether or not he actually sat there in his cave, you know, and wrote it, you don't know. How can you know that, man? Unless you were there. Or was it he was talking to his student the way I'm talking to you, and you're making notes, man, and the notes you're making are not necessarily exactly what I'm saying. You see where I'm going here?
Yes.
Okay. But of course, with this, changes everything. What I'm saying is what you're hearing, or what you're hearing is what I'm saying, you know, including the inflections in my voice and the moves I'm making to emphasize something. We're just going to give us another minute or two over here, because the next session, I'm going to start going in.
Okay.
Okay? Hold on a second, I'm not done. Hey, son.
Whenever you're ready, man.
Okay, you know, this is my... Am I allowed to say this, or am I going to be considered a xenophobe, you know? This is a glass of Guinea Red, for those of you who appreciate the finer things in life, okay?
There you go.
It's a Chianti, you know? And as a Brooklyn boy, that's what we called it. And guess what? At my tender age, I'm still a Brooklyn boy. And I love it, and I won't give it up. Anyway, so let me just have a little taste, and we'll take this out.
Okay.
Keep going, let it roll. And because of the idea of writing this and getting that down to whoever was writing it, if he was writing it, nobody knows. There's no way to know that stuff, man, okay? I mean, you're going to get a handwriting, a kanji handwriting expert. Well, we saw him write this letter to his girlfriend or something, and it's kind of like the same script. Now, give me a break, okay? All right. So the point is, the information that's given, in the Five Rings is not the knowledge. Okay? It's not the knowledge. And when I started really putting this together, I had a friend of mine because you know how these friends things go, we're here today, gone tomorrow, that kind of. He had a copy, a Japanese copy of the Goren no Show. We also went to swordsmiths and the sword schools and things like the smithing of the swords. Okay, yes. So he knew his stuff. I said, okay, what does this say? And he said, it says this. Yeah, man, but that's not what it means. He said, of course that's not what it means, but this is what it says. This is him telling me, okay? And we start going through this thing, man. Now, he didn't go with me for every little thing in there. Because of my communications, if you will, with Musashi's spirit, not Musashi the dude, okay. I was able to glean from the different variations and the different versions what the actual intent of the Book of Five Rings is. Yes, on the surface, it's a manual for mortal combat for the individual soldier, samurai. But because of the intent and having done the meditations to get not into Musashi's mind, you can't do that, okay? Now, this isn't any of this boo stuff, you know? Okay. But transferring your sense of self, I hope I'm explaining this. Well, I don't hope I'm explaining it right. I probably am explaining it right. There are obviously, well, you can challenge this, you can challenge this. I'm not interested in that, man, okay? What is the intent of the Book of Five Rings based on the Buddhist principles of earth, water, fire, air, wind? And no thing. And we're going to end it with this one because we're going to start in the third session with this. No thing. Not ku, which is nothing, but mu, which is no thing. The void is something by definition. That shuts it off right there. And when Tuttle decided they were going to go with this, down to the day when Tuttle was really Tuttle, let's not go there, man, okay? They challenged me on this, and they sent this to some of their educational connections in Japan, Hey, this guy is saying it's not ku, he's saying it's mu. And they will say, well, what's he talking about? Came back to me and said, well, why isn't it ku? And why you say mu? And I says, I can give you two examples for that right from the jump. One of them, ku, by definition, is something. It's something. Mu is the intent of the fifth book. In the Book of Five Rings, mu is no thing. I said, well, how did you derive at that? I said, well, that's very simple. See, I love to play with these guys too, man, a little bit. Joshu, great Zen monk, gave me the answer. I said, well, how'd you do that? I said, because somebody says, well, Master, talking to Joshu, man, I said, what is the value of a dead dog's ear? And Joshu just turned around and said, moo, no thing. And we'll carry on with this in the next session. So, as we do this, you're going to probably be getting more insight into the questions and how to lead me a little bit. I have no idea how many sessions this is going to take, but I will tell you this. Now watch me piss off Peggy, right? When I'm done with this is going to be a motherfucker.
It is already.
All right, there you go, man.
Thank you very much, Sensei.
Okay, you got it.
Auntie Steve Kaufman, we are ending this session.